Okay, good morning everyone, and welcome to this morning's Earth Institute Coffee Morning. It's a real kind of landmark coffee morning this morning because we're launching a whole new theme for the Earth Institute on people, work and society. And it's the brainchild of Donna Marshall, Mags Crean and Penelope Muzanenhamo. And they have all kindly agreed to come and tell us something about it now as part of the coffee morning. So thanks very much. I'll hand over to them.
Thanks very much, Taz. And we heard that we are the 99th coffee morning. So we're very honored to be here. And thanks everybody for turning up. I know at this point, everyone's a bit sick of Zoom. We've all turned into Zombies. So we really appreciate you being here. So as Taz was saying, this is really about launching the new research theme for the Earth Institute, which is people, work and society. So this is something that myself and Mags and Penelope are very passionate about, and we're very, very grateful to Taz and Will, Emily and the rest of the team for letting us propose and also have this research theme. When we were looking at the different themes and the different research focuses within the Earth Institute, Nessa and her team have really done well with their sustainable communities. But what we wanted to do was to take that emphasis on people even further and really focus on the people side of sustainability, ideas around work and also creating, imagining a better society. So the team is myself and Mags and Penelope. Just to tell you a little bit about myself for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Donna Marshall. I am a professor of supply chain management in the College of Business. I've been here for over 20 years now, so I'm one of the old guard, even though people still tell me I'm a blow-in, so that's always good. My work and focus is really around supply chains and global value chains, looking at issues around governance of supply chains, transparency, and in particular sustainability within supply chains and global value chains. And I'll let my other colleagues introduce themselves as well. Mags?
Thanks, Donna. I'm on mute, am I not? No. So lovely to be here. And like Donna, it's an honor to be part of this coffee morning launching the new team. So thank you to the Earth Institute and to Emily for all her hard work behind the scenes, and Taz and Will. I'm with the School of Education here in UCD. I'm a postdoctoral researcher there on a longitudinal study, children's school lives. But my background is social justice, and my area of interest would be social class, care, and that kind of wider link to social justice and creating a more equal and social just society. But equally, I have studied well in the past botany, and I'm a keen interest in environmental issues. So for me, this team really helps me bring together that interest in social justice and climate justice and environmental, I suppose addressing environmental challenges and people being at the centre of that. Thank you. Penelope, I'll hand it over to you.
Hello, everybody. This is my second time speaking to the Institute. My name is Penelope Muzanenhamo, as Donna has already introduced me and Taz has done. I'm assistant professor in business in Africa at the College of Business. My research is looking into African communities, sustainable development, with the goal to try and integrate those communities into business education. I've seen that in the last few months, my research has started to gravitate towards racial equality, racial justice. So this is a new dimension that we are bringing through the people, work and society. That's all. Thank you. Yes, that will be all. Thank you.
So just to tell everybody a little bit about what we're doing. So really what we're doing is focusing on these three major pillars of people, work and society. Oh, obviously they're very big pillars. So what we wanted to do was kind of focus it down and really think about what would be inside those pillars. So
I'll take this slide, Donna. Yeah. So I suppose within those pillars we have these sub-themes. And you'll see, I suppose, just based even on our intros there, some of these reflect our own research interests, which is great. So, and obviously it's evolving work as well as we develop more links and connections with other centres and so forth. So within people, we have, I'm just going to call them out here, and there's a Q&A session where if there's any one of these in particular you want to ask something more on, feel free. So for now and for the purpose of time, I'm just going to keep it quite, just call them out. So within our people pillar, we have fairness and equality. And again, you'll see some overlap with sustainable development goals here. So obviously that one there, it overlaps. We have care and caring, racial justice, and migration. And then in work, we have decent work, working conditions. Again, you'll see overlap there with the SDGs, human rights, and the future of work. And then within society, we have sustainable development, governance and transparency. Again, overlap with the SDGs, and imagining and creating a better world.
Thanks very much, Mags. So just in terms of our membership and who, oh, sorry, my slides are going back and forth, and who we would love to be part of People, Work and Society. Well, we're very, very open to all of the Earth Institute members, and we think there's a lot of crossover there between the more environmental focused themes and the more people focused themes. And I think there's a lot of work we can do together. We're also really interested in working with the other UCD institutes and centres that are specifically looking at people. So centres like Paul's Centre on Sustainable Development, centres on equality studies, the centres on ethics and public life, to name but a few. And we've been in contact with a lot of those centres to see how we can do cross-centre initiatives and really come together to do research and to organise events. We're also interested in bringing other researchers from other universities into the membership, and also thinking about our external stakeholders, charities, civil society organisations, industry, public sector bodies, and the media. So very much a wide remit and an inclusive membership. And then our proposed events for the next little while. So what we'd like to do after the coffee shop is a workshop bringing everyone together to really see what's going on within the university around the issues of people, work and society, and inviting the different researchers and institutes to that workshop. What we'd like to do is really craft the strategy and direction for people, work and society, and look at ideas for future research together, different initiatives that we can propose, and also further events for the new research theme. So the key things really are the joint events with centres and stakeholders, and really promoting the events that are happening throughout UCD and outside. And in the long term, really thinking about collaborative research. There's some absolutely amazing research that's being done within UCD, and I don't think we're really good at connecting the dots of our research and bringing people together. So we're hoping with PWS that we might be able to do that a bit better. So what we're really thinking is that the people, work and society research theme can be a hub for all sorts of social sustainability issues within UCD, and also bringing in our outside stakeholders. So that's, I think, really it from us. So we're very happy to take any questions or any comments from anyone.
Thanks very much indeed. That's a really good overview of where you're coming from and hoping to go with the theme. And I think, you know, that openness and eagerness to engage with different centres and with members with a whole range of different interests, I think is absolutely key to everything, and there's a real kind of enthusiasm there. So, and does anybody have any questions or comments right right off the bat. So I guess to me, what's interesting, I think, is that this gives more of a sort of focus and prominence to the societal, the people, work and society kind of aspects that I would emphasize that they're not necessarily absent from the other themes. So I'm keen that members of the people that are engaged in the other themes really link up with this theme. So yeah, I look forward to that first workshop that we come to. There's the other thing that to me is exciting about this development is the connection with the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that there's a big list of goals that we previously, I guess, would not have been very prominently covering at all. And I think your theme provides a great opportunity for us to do that as an institute in a much better way. Would you care to comment on the SDGs and the kind of influence that they have on your thinking and where you might go with the theme?
I don't know who wants it. Do you want to take that, Donna? Or?
You can take that, Mags.
Yeah. Well, I suppose I named some kind of key ones there when I was doing the introducing the kind of sub-themes like the decent work and the governance piece and the equality and fairness, but it also overlaps in terms of the quality education, gender equality, and this again overlaps with other pillars within the institute. So and that's possibly a strength where, you know, different pillars approach these SDGs in different ways, and then we can come together then to have some kind of common approaches. There's also around the whole idea of responsible consumption and production, that SDG, and kind of the whole idea of innovation and decent work. And I think for me and for Donna and Penelope as well, I think the interesting thing here about excuse me, our different research interests, it kind of allows that the whole role of people in the kind of move to a more sustainable and regenerative system to become center stage. Yes, it's center stage in sustainable development, and communities and support people are a part of that. But in terms of actually looking at not only the impact of environmental change on people, but bringing in that equality theme to the social justice aspect. So particular groups are affected more, and ironically, they may be the groups that are most resistant to what needs to change legislative-wise to have a more sustainable and regenerative kind of system. And bringing in the caring piece links into that, because it's about looking at, well, what is our current paradigm where we think about work and working? And has that led us to this careless state where that idea of interdependence and care for each other and species and the planet hasn't been to the fore? So I suppose for me, the SDGs are central to come forward, because it's, you know, a lot of work being done in that area, and we literally will just feed into that, and hopefully vice versa. We learn from the work happening in other areas on them SDGs.
Thanks, Mags.
And if I can also comment, I think one of the things that we're doing around reduced inequalities is to address the theme from a very concrete angle. We're looking specifically at saying, rather than a very broad understanding of reducing inequalities as relating to differences across countries or within countries, we're saying there's also a very critical dimension, and this is to do with racism. So that's a very sensitive subject, but I think at this point we've sort of approached it from a very bold perspective, and we thank the Institute for that opportunity.
Thanks, Penelope. Donna, do you have anything to add?
I think Mags and Penelope have said it all. That was fantastic. And I think, I think having Mags and Penelope on the team as well is just fantastic, because their perspectives on people, work and society, I think are so critical and so necessary. And I think they're really leading the way in their themes and their ideas, and I think are real champions for, for Penelope, for Africa, and for dealing with issues around racism, and with Mags, the ideas of caring and quality education. So I think, you know, that they're absolutely fantastic people to be leading this and really leading the charge on these things. And for myself, you know, on the SDG alignment, I think the ideas around decent work and responsible consumption and production are really, you know, to the fore. And how do we ensure that people throughout the world are listened to and that their voice is heard in the change to a more environmentally friendly society? I mean, some of the criticisms happening around things like the circular economy is the fact that they're not really looking at people. It's a very kind of technical, environmental view of the world. And we really need to put in some kind of fairness into the circular economy to make it work and to make it happen. And I think those are the things that people work in society can help with, is really bringing that people dimension to the fore, and for, you know, aligning those people focused SDGs.
Thanks, Donna. Anybody else with any questions or comments? Justin?
Hi, thanks very much all. It's a really, really interesting presentation. I was just wondering if COVID-19 has impacted on the design of your work, because it seems to touch upon many of the topics that are within the banners, you know, even when we think about the rollout of the vaccine globally, for example. But I just wonder, has that impacted on the design of your the scope of your work?
Shall I take this one? Thanks, Justin. I think that's a really great question. I think it can't not affect both kind of the design of the research theme and our own personal, you know, research initiatives and objectives. I think that the key thing with people work in society is, you know, we already knew before COVID that structurally a lot of our societies and you know, nations were broken in terms of how we deal with inequality and the way we treat people within our welfare systems. And we knew that things weren't right. We knew that things were broken, but maybe we didn't know how we could help with that or solve that. I think what COVID-19 has done is just really brought those things to the fore and actually made people reflect on, you know, what is society about? Why are we working? You know, what does industry do for us and for society, you know, and is industry our society now, and how much power do industry have within our society? So I think all of those aspects have really become front and center of thinking. And it's time like these, when things have changed radically, that we can start to push that momentum and keep the momentum going for change and for radical thinking about, you know, the way our society is. And I think that's what, you know, when Penelope, Mags and I came together was, you know, the central thing was really about reimagining society and helping to create a much more just, equal and fair society. So I think that's really front and center to the research theme. So great question, Justin. Thank you. Mags, Penelope, did you want to say anything there?
I think you kind of captured it perfectly there, Donna. And I suppose it does come back to the care piece and the social justice piece again, in terms, and the workers, the overlap between it all in terms of, you know, priorities in a more sustainable world, but also in terms of our frontline workers and, you know, who's impacted again, you know, those on the lowest incomes, those in the most precarious work in terms of environmental change. So at the same time, we're dealing with a health pandemic, you know, climate change hasn't went away. So there still needs to be legislative and policy change to deal with the climate crisis at a time when it's possibly going to impact most adversely on some of the poorest workers and frontline workers in the world. So, you know, there's a real, it's not a conflict, it's nothing that we can't manage, but we certainly need to start looking at the interactions between work and social justice, and when these global issues come together, how we respond. And just to come back to Donna earlier when she was talking about myself and Penelope as part of the team, I really do have to say, because obviously this is the launch of our team publicly, that Donna is the driving force behind it from day one, and it is actually a privilege to be working with herself and Penelope on this. But certainly I don't think we can underestimate how much Donna has driven it from the beginning. So thanks, Donna, for initiating it in the first place. It's great to be part of it.
Maeve.
Sorry for fiddling with the mute button there. Hi, listen, I just wanted to say I'm so excited to see this launch, because I suppose clearly from the research side, and I know that's the foremost impetus, we have a real moment now where we have to not only aspire, but concretely monitor and coach and educate, I suppose, and collaborate with industry and business in the next steps. I think there's undoubtedly a moment where those of us who are privileged enough to be able to ask the question, are saying we want a different kind of world. And at the same time, we're also at a critical juncture where we are, probably going to go into a more recessionary environment where there's going to be very systemic, challenging, potentially, trajectories of cost cutting and so on, and redundancies. Or on the other hand, as has emerged through the pandemic, a kind of more social, business and society embedded way forward. And asking that question at a global level is really important, I think, rather than just a local level. So I think the research is critical. I love the fact that it's intersecting the level of the individual person, the work that we do and society, because they're so deeply connected. And then the other reason I'm excited about the partnership is because I suppose my particular focus at the moment is on education and how we bring our research into shaping future leaders. And so I think we've been trying to do that in the business school with our focus on business and society. Every student in the school takes a module where they are asked to do some searching thinking about that. But I think we do need to do much more in the business school in the area of specifically the environmental side of it and the sustainable. So if you like, bringing the Earth Institute's energy into this, I think is going to be very, very positive development. So I'm also hoping secretly that there will be teaching and collaborations that will, and of course I'm thinking about the BSc Sustainability TAS as well, because I think absolutely we're dealing with, or we're happily dealing with a new generation of students who don't want to faff about. They want to ask the big questions and make sure that their actions are making an impact. So those are just some thoughts from me, and it's lovely also to just meet you all for coffee.
Thanks, Maeve. Yeah, much appreciated. Yeah, and that's certainly true of the first cohort of the BSc Sustainability students. It's a real pleasure to be working with them. They do have that clear commitment and engagement and sort of open-mindedness, a willingness to embrace big new ideas and explore them critically and think about their practicality. So it is a really exciting cohort to be working with. And I agree that's kind of generally permeating the student body, that real sense of eagerness to see change and willingness to contribute to that change, I guess. And does anybody else have a response to Maeve at all?
Yeah, I just want to thank Maeve. I mean, Maeve is always such a brilliant supporter of all of these initiatives, and people don't realize the amount of work that Maeve has done. I mean, Maeve is shaping the discourse. I mean, you see Maeve in the Irish Times every other week about what is the future of work, what is the future of society, what is the future of education, and I think this is the key thing, and it's something that Maeve really champions, and I think is absolutely wonderful. And it's that intersection of research and teaching, and for me, you can't pull them apart. We're all researchers, and our research makes us better teachers. So because we're at the cutting edge of our fields, we understand what's going on. We understand the kind of traditional literature and the past and the experience, but we're also seeing what's new and what's emerging. And I think that's what we bring to our students and to that next generation of thinkers, is that they get to see this wonderful emerging of new knowledge and wisdom, and they take that and they shape that, and they also bring it to us and with their experiences. And I think, you know, this team is great, having Mags from the School of Education, who is so embedded in the whole idea of, you know, how do we create a great education system, and how do we translate what we know to that education system, and having champions like Maeve, who is, you know, so on the forefront of what does the future of work look like, what does the future of education look like. I think, you know, that's the kind of knowledge and the wisdom that we need to tap into. And I think the beauty of kind of the research theme is the fact that we really want to include different communities, the student communities, the civil society communities, the charity communities, the industry communities, as well as our researcher communities, to really learn and shape from each other, because that's the only way that we're going to actually create a better tomorrow, and actually, you know, make things where there's buy-in from lots and lots of different stakeholders. And you can't do that when you exclude communities. And I think that's what's so important about, you know, the membership and the team as well. So just to thank Maeve for her kind words and her support.
Any other comments or questions from anybody else?
I have a random thought, if that's all right.
Please, yeah.
Yeah. I tell you what's making me think about is, you know, this whole, it's a long time ago since I really thought about, but this whole thing about workers, you know, like the role of workers in all of this, because economists used to model them as kind of insiders versus outsiders, like in the sense that, do unions and do workers really negotiate, you know, good work conditions? Is it just for themselves, or is it good for broader society? You know, so, and it's the same with this thing with the environment, the sort of worker initiatives, or even initiatives with inside companies, or even what IBEC are promoting. Again, is this good for broader society? You know, so bringing the individual aspect to it, you know. So I think there's something quite important about bringing what I'd call the social justice stuff and individual and human rights focus, and then just to try and equity issues, and just to see that these sort of wonderful things that are happening inside, as you call them, value chains, and workers are kind of driven by workers in a sense, and maybe shareholders and other types of people. I mean, how consistent are they with what's needed in a broader society, you know? So I think if you're getting at that issue, I was just thinking about that the last 20 minutes. I haven't thought about it for a while, because I know there's a disconnect there. A random thought.
Thanks.
It's
Any responses?
It's not so random. It's not so random, you know, because just last night we had the Africa Business Conference, and they were kind of, we had the ambassador of Ethiopia and of South Africa talking with us about, you know, Ubuntu and Medimmer and Ujamaa, and really this interaction, like they were trying to find new models to think about how business and society coexist, and particularly the individual and the group, just what you're saying. And, you know, we've come through a whole decades really of the breakdown of unions, and realizing that type of collectivism, because it's been too, if you like, entrenched in adversarialism, isn't where people's energy seems to be. Now, that's a very sweeping statement, and there'd be many people that would kill me for it, but, you know, we have to, it seems like we need new types of language, and more than that, not only language, but like capacity to act. So I think that's on the money, you know, really do.
Yeah.
I actually just what Maeve is saying in response to your comment, Patrick. Absolutely not random, really, really relevant, and very relevant to our theme. Because I suppose even on a very practical level, in terms of when you talk about, in sociologically, I would think about it in terms of how do we do structural change, and at the same time bring people with you, agency and people's own responsibility, or how, like I said earlier, people are adversely affected, not just people, but particular social groups when you actually start to look at it. And what happens is it does become divisive, in the sense that, you know, even say the discourse around money for cycle lanes, the backlash to that is, oh, what about homelessness? So you have kind of even happening. And if you want to build a momentum, particularly among our young people, but not just climate change and climate justice, but also social justice, to give them that language, because at the moment, I find the new generation so inspiring. They just have the climate change piece, they're driving it, they know it, but they don't necessarily have the social justice language with it, and the two go together. And by not having them together, what you will get is division. Then you'll get groups saying, oh, are we putting climate before people, when really two are one, you know, it's one and the same. So for me, this team really allows them two pieces to be brought together, looking at people's working conditions, but also looking at the fact we do need to reduce carbon emissions. But obviously those in lowest incomes can't afford to pay for that. So bringing these different pieces together, I think, will deal with a lot of division as well that is there and can actually grow. And that's my concern, even from, I suppose, my community work. And I would be involved in local politics. So I suppose my interest is making sure that you can do both and bring people with you, rather than have division amongst people, that everyone sees this is in all of our interests, but acknowledging the social justice piece, because it can be forgotten unless we name it.
Any other comments from Donna and Penelope? Or?
Well, just to comment that people work in society, what it's allowing us to do is to raise more specific questions and give transparency to the issues that we've tended to look at a very, very abstract and very, very rather ambiguous perspective. So when we look at, say, work, we raise very, very specific questions around what we mean by work, the conditions and trade unions that Paul has mentioned. So I think that's one layer of transparency that we're trying to bring to the discussions and engagements that we have.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to add to, I think everyone's spoken so brilliantly, Maeve and Paul and Penelope and Mags. I think what's really key is really kind of the intersections, as Mags is saying, and thinking about where there's division and how do you actually, you know, create actions that bring people together rather than dividing them. I think one of the key concerns at the moment is with identity and people's identity, and people are identifying more with their role as a consumer than they are with their role as a worker. And, you know, there's lots of reasons why unions are being pilloried or seen as a villain. But when you actually look at what unions are doing around the world, you know, they do change societies, and it's where unions are not, is where they're needed the most. I mean, there was a piece of research recently around compliance and monitoring within supply chains, and, you know, looking at factories and seeing where they're being compliant. And what we were finding is that, you know, there was so much fraud within each of the factories. You know, they knew the game, they knew how to write their audits and things like that. And there was a whole business set up, which was a fraudulent business to get you through your audits. But where that wasn't happening was in companies where there was a strong union presence. So the idea of having the union, you know, for all of its past and its antagonism and its divisiveness, is actually really, really powerful in bringing people together and giving them identity and giving them some power and some voice and some agency. And I think that's the real key thing, is that intersection between the agency and the power, and how do we create power. And I think what's exciting about, you know, the group here and what we're thinking about is, how do we turn these great ideas into actions? What are the practices? What are the behaviors? What are the cultures that we need to start looking at and embedding to try and bring a more inclusive idea about who we are and what we do, how we work, our purpose in life? And I think that's what's really exciting, and being able to be aware that divisiveness is the thing that's going to hold us back, and inclusiveness will take us forward, I think is hugely important.
That's fantastic. Thanks very much, everyone. I think we've run over time. It's been such an exciting start to this new conversation, and I'm really looking forward to being involved in it as it goes forward, and to encourage everybody else to get involved as well, and to see where it takes us and what can be achieved through it. So thanks very much indeed.
And if anyone wants to join us, just get in touch with myself or Penelope or Mags, and we'd be happy to have a chat about what we're doing and what we're thinking for the future. But obviously we would love everyone to be involved and really welcome everyone to the research team.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks a million.